Hey friend, please subscribe. 1 second for you. Big deal for me.
I was 36 when my daughter, Tessa, died during a weekend camp trip. I'm 48 now, a carpenter in upstate New York, and I still hate October storms. But this was November, cold, gray morning in 2013. The wind had that dull, chewing rhythm that rattles your jaw and makes your ears ache even with your hood up. I pulled into the cemetery like I always did. Same time, same lot, same gravel crunch under my boots. Tessa's grave was 3 rows in, second from the left. Her inhaler was still tucked under the little photo on the headstone like it ever did a damn thing. I knelt, wiped some of the drizzle off her picture with my flannel, and whispered the stuff I never said right the first time. I should have kept you home. Should have double-checked your bag. Should have told you it was okay to be scared. My voice didn't carry. It barely made it out of my throat. But then I heard something from the next row over. A small voice, thin, like a cheap radio 2 rooms away. Mom, Dad, I'll be good. Just don't forget me. I stood up, slow, and peeked over. It was a boy, maybe 8, kneeling in front of a double headstone. He was soaked clean through, rain dripping from his bangs, sleeves clinging to his arms like tissue paper. He didn't see me at first. He was busy crying and talking into the stone like he was trying to reach someone with bad reception. He said his name was Milo. Told me his parents died in a wreck on Route 27 that spring. A pileup. Said he was in a group home now, but he slipped out early that morning to come here. The older boys, they teach us to steal stuff. Smoke stuff. I don't want to be like that, he said. I just wanted to come see them. I didn't know who else would remember me. I didn't say much back. Just nodded and took off my flannel. Draped it around his shoulders. He looked even smaller in it, like the wind might lift him if I let go. I'm not a rescuer, I told him, but I know the look of somebody left behind. He looked up at me like he didn't know whether to run or fall asleep. I offered him a hand instead. We walked to my truck together. Before we start, tell us which city or country you're listening from. Let's see which corners of the world we've gathered from today. Thanks. And now the story. We didn't talk much at the diner. Milo sat across from me in that oversized flannel, still damp around the cuffs, eyes bouncing to the front door like he was waiting for a SWAT team to kick it in. He didn't even take his hands off the plate once the food came, just shoveled eggs and hash browns like someone might snatch it from him mid-bite. I thought you weren't hungry, I said, after he cleaned his plate down to the smear of jelly. He glanced up like he'd been caught stealing. It's not that I was lying. Sometimes I forget until I start eating. You want the second roll wrapped up? I asked. He nodded, said, for later, just in case. Like we were prepping for a siege instead of heading back to a group home. I flipped open my old Nokia and dialed the number from the side of the folder he'd been carrying, half wrapped in plastic to stay dry. The director picked up on the second ring. I gave my name, told her I had Milo with me. She didn't yell. She didn't ask dumb questions. Just breathed a sigh of relief so loud I could hear it over the clatter of plates around us. I'm just glad he's okay, she said. Please don't make him any promises you can't legally keep. I walked him back myself. It was maybe 10 minutes from the diner. At a stoplight, he asked, "You got any kids?" I did, I said. The building was plain brick with a chain-link fence half-heartedly circling the back lot. We buzzed in, and a woman with tired eyes met us at the door like she'd already used up her week's supply of patience. "Thank you," she said to me like she meant it. We were about to call the cops. She took his name down, then mine, wrote it into a thick binder with a pen that barely worked, asked me what time we'd met, if he'd eaten, how long he'd been out. Milo stood behind me, arms crossed, eyes on the floor like he was waiting for punishment. One of the staff offered him a dry hoodie and a granola bar. He took both without looking up. I stood there, awkward as hell, wondering if I was supposed to shake someone's hand or just leave. The director came down a few minutes later. Short gray hair, thin smile. She thanked me again and mentioned, almost offhand, there'd been a rumor of a relative somewhere on Milo's dad's side. Nobody had shown. No one called. No one claimed him. So, adoption might be possible, she said, careful like she was walking on broken glass. But these things take time. A lot of it, I gave her my number, said I'd visit if that was allowed. She nodded, asked me to sign a line on a visitor log, then waved me toward the door like we both knew the rest wasn't in our hands. At the threshold, he gripped my sleeve like it was the only solid thing around. I let him hold on until the buzzer clicked. Once I hit the parking lot, the cold hit harder. I sat in my truck, engine off, and stared at the dented front fender like it owed me answers. The bed was full of scrap trim and loose screws. My tools were still in milk crates because I'd sold my good cases the spring before. Renee had left that winter, 3 months after Tessa's funeral. Said I was gone even when I was home. She wasn't wrong. But she wasn't wrong to leave either. People bail when the air goes dead in a house, and ours had been a tomb since October. Phone buzzed. Brett Halford. We hadn't talked since he split off to start his own woodshop. He used to say he needed fewer clients and more silence. But the truth was he couldn't stand taking pity work. Neither could I. Got a minute? He asked. Sort of. My crew's booked out. We landed this hotel lobby restoration job in Shroon Lake, and I need hands. You still working? Small stuff, I said. Decks, patch jobs, whatever fits in the back of the truck. This pays better, he said. Steady hours. You set your day rate. I didn't ask for details. I just grabbed the diner receipt from my cup holder and scribbled the start time on the back. Then I slid it under the visor where Tessa's hair tie still hung. Faded purple elastic, stretched but unbroken. Didn't mean I believed in anything. Just meant I didn't want to forget. The next morning I showed up to Brett's site in my oldest boots and no expectations. He handed me a clipboard, pointed at a walnut-paneled archway that needed refinishing and said, "You get that right, and the rest is easy." I ran my hand along the wood. The grain felt like muscle memory. I hadn't touched anything that solid in months. That night, I skipped the cemetery. Not because I forgot, but because the noise in my head was quiet enough not to need it. By the second week on Brett's job, my hands remembered what it felt like to matter. Sanding down old walnut panels was the closest thing I'd had to peace in years. It was like mowing grief. Just straight lines, constant noise, no room in your head for anything else but the next pass and the feel of the grain. Saturday visits with Milo started simple. I'd sign him out for the day, and we'd head into town, hit the library, the dollar movie if it was still running, maybe walk the strip mall for cheap snacks. First thing I bought him was a new pair of sneakers. Nothing fancy, but ones that didn't leave bloody rings on his heels. "Feels like pillows," he said, stomping around the aisle like he needed proof. We got into a rhythm. Not perfect, not easy, but something like normal. He never asked questions about Tessa, and I didn't press when he clammed up mid-sentence like the words were trying to choke him on the way out. But I noticed every time he stared too long at some dad carrying a toddler, or watched a kid shove a stroller through a parking lot puddle with his mom yelling behind him. At my place, I'd cleaned up. Nothing dramatic, just cleared space on the kitchen table, aired out the couch, picked up the cereal bowls I'd stopped bothering to rinse. But Tessa's room? I didn't touch a thing. Posters were still pinned up crooked. The bead curtain still clinked in the doorway when the heat kicked on. That little painted trinket box still sat dead center on her dresser, chipped on the corner, lid slightly warped, full of plastic rings and junk jewelry. First weekend I brought Milo over. He followed me down the hall like he was stepping through a museum. He didn't speak. Just stood in the doorway to her room with his hands behind his back, shoulders stiff, eyes moving like he was counting every color and surface. "You can go in," I said, even though my throat tightened when I said it. "I don't want to touch anything," he said. "Feels wrong." "You're not breaking glass." "It's a bedroom." He stepped in slow, eyes wide. Then he reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a little folded card, bright yellow construction paper, with crooked hearts drawn in marker. "I found this," he said, "in a book at the thrift store." I don't know. It looked lucky I took it from him, already halfway through a smile when my stomach dropped out. "Dad, I love you," it said in big lopsided letters. The A in Dad was backward. The marker bled through, and the two hearts looked like potatoes. My throat clenched. I knew that card. Tessa made it for me when she was 9, right after her asthma attack on the camping trip that summer. She'd thought it was her fault for missing the hike. She gave me the card the next day when I got home from a roofing job in Syracuse, and I kept it on my dresser for years. I remembered, clear as day, the winter Renee went on a tear through the house, boxing up everything she could donate, just to create space where Tessa used to be. I was working a job that week, installing cedar shakes in a snowstorm, and I let her bag the house without fighting. I didn't want another screaming match in the driveway. "Milo," I said, and my voice cracked worse than I expected. "Where exactly did you find this?" "In a book bin," he said. "Goodwill off Main, near the gas station with the broken sign. That was 20 minutes from my place, right where Renee used to do drop-offs." I looked at the card again, folded once down the middle, like someone had closed it and never opened it again. My chest buzzed, something between heartbreak and rage. "This card was mine," I said. "My daughter made it for me." "It used to sit on my dresser." Milo went pale. He didn't say a word, just pulled the card back to his chest like I'd accused him of stealing something sacred. "I didn't know," he said. "I didn't mean you didn't do anything wrong," I cut in. "I'm not mad. It's just that card meant a lot. Still does." He stood there frozen, arms crossed over the card like it might break. I wanted to yell, to cry, to take back every box I'd let leave that house without a fight. Instead, I sat down hard on the edge of Tessa's bed and rubbed my face with both hands. "You should keep it," I said finally. Milo blinked, stunned. "But it's yours." "Maybe it wanted to find me again," I said. "And maybe it used you to get here." He nodded, glassy-eyed, and sat next to me. Neither of us said a thing for a while. The heater kicked on, rattling the beads in the doorway like wind chimes. "Did she like horses?" he asked after a few minutes, pointing to a poster. "Only the fake kind." She hated real ones. Said they smelled like wet dogs and bad breath. He laughed, small, almost embarrassed, but it was the first time I heard him sound like a kid. That night after I dropped him off and drove home alone, I sat in my truck for 20 minutes with that empty passenger seat next to me, and for the first time in a long time, it didn't feel quite so hollow. The next visit didn't start with Milo. It started with a woman leaning against the brick wall beside the group home door, arms folded, eyes fixed like she'd been waiting just for me. I hadn't seen her before. No badge, no clipboard, just a wool coat, teaching shoes, and a look like she'd already decided I was a problem. "You're the carpenter who takes him out," she said before I even hit the steps. Not a question. Just a cold read, voice flat, controlled. Like a teacher calling out a kid caught cheating. "I've brought him back every time," I said, careful. "No one's lost anything." She straightened up. "Clara Voss. I'm his aunt. My brother was Milo's dad." That name hit hard. Not because I knew it, but because I hadn't heard it from anybody before. Not the staff, not the director, not even Milo. "I didn't know he had anyone left," I said. "I've been looking for him since the accident," she said, clipped. "There was a mess with the estate. I moved schools. The paperwork got delayed. I didn't stop looking. I just didn't get here fast enough." Her voice cracked right at the edge of that last word. Just barely. Then it was gone. "I'm not trying to replace anybody," I told her. "I found him at the cemetery. He needed someone that morning. That's it. Boundaries exist for a reason," she said. "And group homes aren't pickup lots. You don't just show up and decide you're family." I bit back the first 3 things I wanted to say. Took a breath and nodded toward the building. "Want to talk inside?" "No," she snapped. "Outside's fine." So we stood there under the flagpole like 2 lawyers in a parking lot, arguing custody without a judge. "You take him for donuts and library trips, fine," she said. But you don't know him. I know he likes extra napkins and won't eat anything with raisins. I know he checks the exits in every building he walks into. I know he won't sit with his back to the door, even in a booth. That tell you nothing? She didn't blink. I know he used to hum to himself when he couldn't fall asleep. I know he hates orange soda because it makes his stomach turn. I know what he looked like as a baby. So don't stand here and measure closeness by how many muffins you've bought him. It wasn't what she said. It was how she said it. Like I'd stolen something from her, and she was trying to decide if she should call the cops or grab it back herself. I'm not taking him home anymore, I said, hands up. Not unless the director signs off. I'm not stupid. Her eyes softened, barely, but she still nodded like she'd won something. Inside, the director pulled us both into her office, laid it out clean. Visitation logs, sign-ins, weekly limits, notes from each outing. This isn't a turf war, she said. You both care. But care has rules. Act like adults or don't come back. Clara crossed her arms and nodded. I did the same. It felt like detention with someone else's mom. Afterward, out in the lobby, she turned to me and said, I want references. References. If you're spending time with my nephew, I want to know who you are. That shouldn't be too much to ask. I reached into my back pocket and pulled out a folded business card, Brett's number scrawled on the back. Then I grabbed a church bulletin from my glove box on the way out and circled Pastor Neil's name in ink. He lets me stash spare lumber behind the shed, I said. He'll tell you if I'm a drunk or a thief. I'm neither. She held the paper like it might bite her. Then she stuffed it into her coat pocket and said, Thanks. I'll check. I'm guessing background checks come next? I asked. If it were up to me, yeah, she said. You're a stranger. You showed up out of nowhere, I paused, then said, I lost my daughter this October. Camp weekend. She had asthma. Something went wrong. I've been trying not to drown ever since. Clara didn't look away, didn't tilt her head or offer sympathy. Just let the words hang in the air like sawdust. She made me a card when she was 9, I added. Bright yellow. Said, Dad, I love you, in marker with backward letters. Somehow that card ended up in a thrift store bin. Milo found it. Thought it was lucky she closed her eyes. Slow. When she opened them again, the sharp edge in her voice was dulled, but not gone. I'm sorry, she said. That happened. And for the card. That's rough. Yeah, I said. It was. She shifted her weight from one foot to the other, then pulled out her phone. Give me your number, she said. I'll give you mine. We can keep each other in the loop. Not because we're friends. Because Milo doesn't need more adults letting him down. I gave it to her. We typed in side by side, arms crossed like a standoff at a peace talk. I'm not the enemy, I said finally. No, she said, locking her phone. But you're not family either. She turned like that was the end of it, then paused halfway down the steps. Over her shoulder, she said, Not yet, anyway. That night, after Clara walked away with her phone full of fresh contact numbers and nothing resolved, I couldn't sleep. Again. I lay there with the ceiling pressing down like a bad memory, and by 3:30 a.m. I gave up. I went into the hall closet, pulled out the banker's box I hadn't opened since the funeral, and sat on the kitchen floor like I was waiting for a bomb to go off. Inside was everything I couldn't throw out but couldn't look at either. School folders, half-filled notebooks, art projects with macaroni still clinging to the glue. But it was the aftercare paperwork that got me. I flipped through the stack and stopped on the camp permission slip. Bottom corner. Tiny print. There it was. 2 checkboxes for emergency inhaler access. One for carried by child, one for stored with staff. Both blank. Emergency plan section, also blank. Not initialed. Not signed by anyone but me. How the hell had I missed that? I gripped the page so tight it crinkled. I remembered signing it on the tailgate of my truck, in a rush, after Renee shoved it at me with a pen. Tessa had already packed. They were running late. I was halfway through drilling a porch rail and had dust on my boots, caulk on my hands. I signed without reading. That's what I told myself. But it didn't feel like enough now. Not close. I shoved the form in my jacket and drove to the old camp office in the morning. The same peeling sign, same split asphalt lot. The lady behind the desk looked like someone's aunt who volunteered too long. "You'll have to make an appointment," she said without looking up. "I'm not here for a tour," I told her. "My daughter died on your watch." That got her attention. "I've already spoken to the insurance team." "It's been years," she said, guarded. "I'm not asking for money," I said, and laid the permission slip flat on the counter. "I'm asking who signed off on this, and why nobody noticed it was blank." She shifted like she wanted to hit a panic button. Then I pulled out the rescue cert list, dug it out of an old email thread with a union buddy, showed her where half the lifeguards listed had expired certifications before the summer even started. "I'm just here for the truth," I said, "but I'll take it in court if that's what it takes." She scribbled down a number and slid it across the counter. "That's our legal contact now. You'll need to go through them." I took the paper, walked outside, and sat in the cab of my truck, shaking like I'd just fought a bear. I called the number from the electricians' union instead. Donnie knew a lawyer who handled safety violations, said he worked contingency and didn't scare easy. "Send me what you've got," the guy said when I called. "I'll let you know if it's worth swinging at." I scanned everything: forms, photos, the expired cert list, even the weather report from that weekend showing the rain that kicked off before the hike. He called me back 2 days later. "We've got a pulse," he said. "Not a jackpot, but enough to push for a consent order." What does that get me? Paperwork. Proof. Maybe a small fine. No courtroom drama. Just ink on paper. I told him to go for it. The next 9 weeks were slow hell. Back and forth emails, form letters, camp lawyers pretending they didn't understand simple questions. I had to rescan the same folder 3 times. Brett offered to help once, but I told him this was one I needed to do alone. Milo asked once why I looked like I was chewing glass. I told him I was just tired. He nodded like he understood too well. Then finally, one Monday afternoon, the lawyer called. "They signed," he said. $7,500 penalty, written acknowledgement of failure to enforce medical safety policy and lifeguard compliance. That's what you get. It wasn't money I cared about. I didn't want their apology. I wanted proof, something official, something I could put down like a brick and say, this was real. I printed out the consent order, took it straight to Tessa's room. I opened the trinket box on her dresser and slid the folded sheet beneath the rings and plastic beads. Then I sat on the edge of her bed and whispered, "That's the only stone I know how to lift." That night, I went to Brett's shop to pick up a sander I'd left behind. He took one look at me and said, "You look taller." Maybe I just stood up straight for once. Whatever it is, keep it up. 2 days later, Clara called. The director must have told her. No small talk, no warm-up. "I heard about the case," she said. "Good." Her tone had changed. Less suspicion, more something else. Like she wasn't waiting for me to fail anymore. "How'd Milo take it?" she asked next, like I'd been grandfathered into the we without anyone saying it. "He doesn't know all the details," I said. "But he knows I've been fighting something." She paused. "That counts. Probably more than you think I didn't tell her I'd cried the day the order arrived. I didn't say I'd nearly thrown up in the parking lot of the post office when I opened the envelope. I just said, I'm not done being angry, but I'm done letting it eat me." That night, I slept 6 straight hours, the first time in a long while. The next Saturday visit ran long. Milo and I had gone out to that flea market up in Ticonderoga. He was obsessed with looking for old Hot Wheels and rusted tools like they were treasure. I let him poke around while I picked through a bucket of mismatched screws, thinking about whether I could fix a busted chair leg in Brett's shop without buying a new clamp. It was late when I dropped him off, and by the time I got home, the sun was already sliding behind the trees. I walked in, turned on the light in Tessa's room, and paused. Something was off. Subtle, but it hit me like a jolt. Her charm bracelet was gone. Used to hang on a little pushpin above her mirror. Cheap silver chain with 6 little plastic shapes, all scratched and faded from years of wear. She'd gotten it from a dentist prize box when she was 6 and never took it off until middle school. I checked the trinket box on her dresser. 2 plastic rings, both pink, were gone. So was the brass locker key she used to carry on a lanyard. None of it worth $1, but every piece had weight. My gut clenched. First thought was a break-in. But the door was still locked, windows fine, nothing else touched. My second thought was smaller, quieter. That little hand I'd seen once, hovering just over the dresser the first time I brought Milo in here. Like he wanted to touch something but wasn't sure he had the right. Next visit, I didn't wait. After lunch, I sat him down on the couch and asked him straight. "Did you take anything from Tessa's room?" He froze, didn't move, didn't speak. Just looked down at his shoes like they had the answer. "Milo." His shoulders curled in. Then he dug into his pockets, front, back, jacket, hoodie, and laid it all out on the coffee table between us. The charm bracelet, the rings, the key, and one more thing, a folded-up piece of paper with the word "stay" written in shaky pencil, smudged from being folded and unfolded too many times. "I didn't steal them," he said fast, words tumbling. "I just kept them. For luck. I thought, if I had a piece of her, maybe you wouldn't leave me at the home by accident." The silence stretched between us like a wire pulled too tight. "Leaving's not an accident," I said. "It's a choice. You make it, or someone else makes it for you. But either way, it's not invisible. You see it coming." He nodded, barely, like he'd already decided that counted as an answer. "I'm not mad you took them," I added. "I'm mad you didn't ask." He looked up at me with that wide, scared expression I'd seen too many times, like everything he touched might break, including me. "You can have one," I said. "Pick something. A small thing, but from now on, we ask first. Everything else stays in the room we're keeping together." His eyes landed on the bracelet first. I could tell he wanted it. But when he tried to clasp it around his wrist, the latch was busted, bent from years of being yanked off too fast, too many times. "Hang on," I said, and got up. I went to my toolbox, pulled out my smallest needle-nose pliers, and sat down across from him again. Took me 2 minutes to fix the clasp. When I fastened it around his wrist, it hung loose, a little too big, but the second it clicked shut, he sat up straighter like I'd handed him a medal. "Looks good on you," I said. "It's hers," he whispered. "Doesn't mean it can't be yours too." After I dropped him off, Clara called. I figured the director told her something. "Thanks for telling me," she said. "You didn't have to." "He didn't take them to hurt anyone," I told her. "He took them because he's scared of getting erased." She was quiet a beat, then said, "Next visit. Would you bring the items with you? Let him choose the one he really wants. I think it'll help if we do it together." "Yeah, I'll bring them." That next Saturday, we sat in the visitation room. Me, Clara, Milo, and the trinket box in the center of the table. Clara had brought a bag of peanut butter crackers and those apple juice boxes kids pretend to hate but still drink. Milo looked between us, nervous. I opened the box one item at a time, laid them out in front of him like choices on a game show. He picked up each one, studied it, then finally reached for the locker key, the dumbest, cheapest thing in the box. Brass, dented, the number half rubbed off. He turned it over in his fingers, then slipped it into his shoe. Clara raised an eyebrow. "In your shoe?" "So I don't lose it," he said. "That's where I keep stuff that matters." She looked at me, half smiled. I didn't say anything, just nodded. As we were leaving, Milo tugged my sleeve and whispered, "Thanks for fixing the bracelet." "Even if I didn't keep it, you kept the part that counts," I said. He didn't let go of my sleeve until we hit the front door. After the locker key, something shifted. Not between Milo and me, but around us. The staff at the group home started checking in more often. Clara started looping me in on things without sounding like she hated herself for doing it. And one Monday morning, the director called me in and dropped it straight. "It's time to make things official," she said. "We can't stay in limbo forever." She meant paperwork, real steps, legal tracks. I'd been half expecting it, half dreading it. I knew Clara was working her angle too. She had the blood tie, the steady job, the teacher rep. I had carpentry and Saturday visits, and a kid who still checked my coat pockets when we hugged. The county set the appointment 2 weeks out. I pulled up to the courthouse in my work boots, paint on my jeans, hair still damp from a rushed sink rinse. The office was on the 3rd floor, packed with gray chairs and manila folders, and it smelled like toner and floor wax, like someone tried to cover up time itself. Clara was already there. Blazer, blouse, clean lines. She looked like a woman who'd filed a lot of forms in her life and had never once left a signature box empty. She didn't smile, but she didn't glare either. That was progress. Milo was drawing trucks on a legal pad in the corner, humming under his breath, sneakers swinging just above the carpet. The clerk called us in. Small office, 1 desk, 2 chairs too close together. We sat, knees nearly touching, as she rattled off the options like she was reading off a lunch menu. Guardianship petition here, kinship placement there. Both can't proceed independently for the same child in the same window unless you're petitioning jointly, which requires... Clara was already filling in blanks before the clerk finished. I stayed quiet, listening, fists pressed to my knees. I wasn't good with forms. I was good with boards, beams, doors that didn't close right. But this was a system, and it didn't care how many cinnamon rolls I'd bought or bedtime talks I'd earned. Then Clara turned to me, tight smile, no warmth. "I'm filing for kinship," she said. "It's what makes sense." Legally, anyway, I looked at her, long and steady. "And I'm filing for guardianship. Because he's not a weekend plan to me." Her jaw tensed. "He's not a plan to me either." We were slipping again. Back into the tug-of-war neither of us wanted, but both of us couldn't seem to stop playing. I caught the clerk glancing between us like she was ready to flag security. So I stood up. "Can we take 5?" I asked. She gave me the kind of shrug that meant she didn't care as long as I didn't bleed on the paperwork. Out in the hallway, it was cold. Too much glass. Too much light. Clara stood beside me, arms crossed, like she was bracing for a gust. "This isn't about you," she said. "No," I replied, "it's about him. And how we're going to screw him up by trying to win." We stared straight ahead. A janitor pushed a cart down the hall. A little girl cried somewhere near the family court wing. "He needs both of us," I said. "You've got the school forms and the doctor talk. I've got Saturday afternoons and late-night truck rides." She looked over, and for once, didn't argue. "We could file together," I said. "Joint co-guardianship. I take day to day. You get access, full rights on medical and school. We build a schedule. You're serious?" "Yeah. You?" She nodded once. "I'll draft the proposal tonight." Back inside, the clerk blinked like we'd walked in wearing matching shirts. "You're changing the filing?" "We're filing together," Clara said, "with a written schedule and monthly reports." "Okay," the clerk said, slow. "That can work. If the judge signs off, we spent the next 2 hours scribbling out logistics, who does pickups, who signs homework slips, how holidays get split. Milo watched us the whole time, still drawing, still humming. When we finished, he looked up and said, "So I don't have to choose?" "No," I told him. "You get both." Brett offered to write a letter for me. He'd seen the court dates coming. The week before, he'd asked if I wanted to be listed as a subcontractor on his new city permit filing. I told him no. I was still doing my own thing. But when he offered to vouch for me, I didn't hesitate. "Steady worker, reliable hours, shows up early and does clean work," he wrote. "Has restored over 40 hotel fixtures and supervised 2 team builds without incident." I added a binder with job photos, booths, armchairs, banisters, even a matching walnut bench that looked too nice to sit on. Lined them up like soldiers in the file folder. The day we turned everything in, It felt less like a victory, and more like finally putting up walls in a house that had been foundation only for too long. Then Renee showed up. I hadn't seen her in over a year. She stood on my porch one evening, wearing a soft blue cardigan I didn't recognize, hair curled, makeup done like she was on her way somewhere nicer than me. "I heard you've been involved with that kid," she said, like it was a rumor that embarrassed her. "I have," I said. "His name's Milo." She looked around like expecting him to pop out with a slingshot. "I don't get it," she said. "Why you can't move on properly." "I am moving on," I said. "It just doesn't look like yours." She crossed her arms. "That's settlement from the camp case." "There was no payout," I cut in. "Just accountability. That's all I wanted." She didn't even try to fake a goodbye. Just turned and walked down the steps like the air offended her. Later that night, I got a text from Clara. Just 5 words. "Glad you held the line." Attached was a photo, Milo at recess, grinning like he owned the whole damn world, giving a thumbs up with both hands like a goofball. I sat on the porch for a long time after that, watching the yard shadows move and thinking maybe, for once, we'd gotten something close to right. I was still staring at the photo Clara sent when January rolled in like a drunk with brass knuckles. Temperatures bottomed out, and my truck did the same. Transmission kicked, groaned, and finally gave up on Route 9 just past the diner. The shop quoted me $3,100 even, no negotiation, and I had 2 checks, processing, that might as well have been IOUs written in smoke. The same week, the pipes in Brett's shop froze and cracked, which meant all sanding work paused while he dealt with the flood. We'd been keeping each other afloat, but now we were both up to our necks in nothing. Worst part? I'd promised Milo a trip to the Lake Museum once the roads cleared. He'd been counting down on one of those free paper calendars from the gas station. Red pen stars on the 3rd Saturday. I had to cancel the morning of. "I thought we were still going," he said, looking up from the couch with his socked feet tucked under him. "We can't, bud," I said. "Truck's out. Until I fix it, we're stuck." He didn't argue, didn't cry, just nodded like someone who'd already learned how plans fall apart before they ever start. An hour later, I was in the garage trying to figure out if I could rebuild the damn transmission myself when I heard the back door open and shut. Milo walked in carrying a shoebox, cardboard taped around the edges, his name scribbled on the side in thick marker. He set it on my workbench without saying a word, then pulled the lid off and turned it toward me like he was showing me something sacred. Inside was his RC truck, black, scratched, with the number 8 peeling off the side, and 2 unopened packs of baseball cards wrapped in a rubber band. "You can sell these," he said, trying to sound like he didn't care. "I don't need them." "And you need your truck for work." I didn't say anything right away. I just looked down at that plastic truck, knowing it had been his #1 favorite since the first weekend we hung out. He used to park it under his bunk at the group home so no one else would touch it. I set my hand on the box, heavy and flat like it was a Bible, and I was taking an oath. "We're not selling anything, Milo." He nodded, eyes jumping around the room, blinking too fast. "I mean it," I said. "Your stuff stays yours." "That's not up for debate." He nodded again, a little slower this time. Then he turned and left the garage without another word. I stood there for 5 minutes, hand still on the box, heart thudding like I'd just run stairs. That night, I made calls. I hated begging, hated asking for favors, but I was running out of options. I called a restaurant owner in Clifton Park, whose bar stools I'd refit in July. Fancy place, hardwood everything, real silver on the tables, a wine list longer than their actual menu. He picked up on the second ring. "You still in the custom game?" he asked. "Always," I said. "Got anything on deck?" "My architect just fired a vendor," he said. "Booth job fell through. 6 oak booths by the 22nd. You in?" "Absolutely," I said before he even finished the sentence. He laughed. "That's what I like to hear." By 4 that afternoon, he'd wired a $4,400 deposit into my account. I called Brett and told him the news. Without even hesitating, he said, "Take my second pickup. You'll need it for deliveries." You sure? I'm not using it. And no, I don't want money. You'll pay me back and help when I need it. He tossed me the keys like it was nothing. That night I picked up Milo early, and we celebrated with takeout. Fried chicken, mashed potatoes, chocolate milk he tried to pretend he didn't love. We put on a rented DVD and crashed on the couch. Halfway through the movie, I looked over and he was asleep, RC truck resting on his stomach like a life vest. I sat there with the empty fry box on my lap, listening to the radiator tick and hum. For the first time since October, the air in the room didn't feel thin. I took a picture of him like that, sent it to Clara. Trucks fixed, new job landed, takeout victory in progress. She texted back a confetti emoji, then called me a minute later. You sound lighter, she said, not asking. I probably am. Did he really try to sell you that truck? Shoebox and all, I said. He thought it'd help. Yeah, that sounds like him. We didn't stay on long. She had papers to grade, and I had a booth cut list to draft. But after we hung up, I leaned back, looked at Milo, and whispered, "We're gonna be okay." He didn't hear me, but I needed to say it anyway. The court signed off on the co-guardianship in late March 2015. Judge didn't even flinch, just stamped it and moved on like we were renewing plates at the DMV. My address went first on Milo's school records. Clara's name slotted right under mine. 2 lines that didn't match on paper but made sense to the kid in the middle. Milo started 3rd grade a couple months late, but he jumped in like it owed him something. His writing was behind, math was a mess, and he'd flinch every time someone raised their voice in class. But he showed up, stubborn as hell. Clara tutored him after school, 2 days a week in her own classroom with walls covered in crayon art and posters about growth mindset. The place smelled like pencil shavings, glue sticks, and whatever plastic they used to make cheap chairs. She texted me updates. He read out loud today without stopping. 2 pages of writing, no tears. He asked to bring his own ruler. We built him a desk together, reclaimed maple from Brett's back lot. I sanded the top smooth and left the knots in. Milo sat across from me every evening, doing fractions while I planed down chair rails. Some nights we'd hum the same tune without realizing it, caught in our own rhythm, not saying a word. The hotel job turned into a theater restoration. They liked how the booths turned out, so they brought me in to do the lobby trim, then the balcony railing. Clara brought her class on a field trip, and I spotted her near the entrance, arms crossed, watching her students stare up at the gold-flecked ceiling I'd scraped and stained by hand. She didn't say anything, just caught my eye, smiled once, then turned back to her kids. At the school charity sale in April, Milo spotted a bin labeled Toys for Tots and got it in his head to donate his RC truck. Said someone else might need it more than him now. I crouched beside him and said, "You already gave enough, bud." But I didn't let him finish. I bought the class a full set of kickballs instead. Told the volunteer to put them under anonymous, and Milo grinned like he'd pulled a prank no one would ever figure out. He still kept the locker key in his shoe. He'd check for it sometimes, tap the side of his foot like he was making sure the world was still real. Some nights before bed, he'd pull it out, hand it to me and say, "You keep it," like a test, like he needed to see if I'd hold on without making it mine. I always handed it back in the morning. Clara started coming by on Sundays with casseroles she swore were for Milo, but half the time, she stayed past dinner arguing with me about which decade had the best baseball pitchers. I told her Koufax could throw heat without radar guns. She swore Nolan Ryan was basically a god in cleats. She always left at exactly 9:15, no matter what. One night on her porch, after she dropped off lasagna with 2 layers of foil like I was storing it for winter, she sat beside me and asked real quiet, "Do you ever feel guilty being happy sometimes?" I didn't answer right away. I looked at the porch railing I'd built out of scrap pine, watched the streetlights flicker. "Yeah," I said finally, "but I'm learning to carry more than one weight." She didn't ask what that meant. She just nodded, stood up, and told me to return the casserole dish clean this time. We didn't rush anything. We didn't need to. We made it through Wednesdays without snapping. We figured out when to talk and when to shut up. She gave me space when I stayed up late sorting through old Tool invoices. I gave her space when she got too quiet after parent-teacher nights. One afternoon, I swung by her place to drop off something Milo forgot. One of those cheap spiral notebooks with a drawing of a robot on the cover. Her house was tidy, but lived in. Chalk dust on the steps, stickers on the fridge, a dry erase board by the calendar with reminders scribbled in blue marker. That's when I saw it. Family night, Friday 6:30. Bring Uno cards. Written in her handwriting, underlined once. I stood there longer than I should have, hand still on the doorknob, just staring at those two words. Family night. No one announced it. No ceremony. No folded papers or official stamps. Just something scribbled on a calendar next to a spaghetti night reminder and a dentist appointment. And there I was, standing in her hallway like a damn fool, smiling at ink. I stayed in that hallway a few minutes longer than I should have, watching the marker ink fade under the calendar light. That was spring of 2015. By the time 2018 rolled around, we'd moved into a 3-bedroom with a yard, real grass, and a back porch I built myself. I let Milo pick the paint for his room. He chose this weird navy blue called Midnight Armor and covered it in poster tacks and hand-cut decals of baseball logos. We took our time on purpose. Good things take longer than people think. Clara and I got married at the Saratoga courthouse on a Tuesday morning in fall of 2019. No photographer, no flowers. Brett stood behind me in his only pressed shirt, and Clara's colleague read a poem that didn't rhyme, but still hit hard. Milo wore a thrifted blazer and mismatched socks, and cracked a joke about no refunds after the I do. We never changed the paperwork. The co-guardianship stayed filed as is. Milo didn't need a new certificate or a different last name to know who fed him, who showed up to his school conferences, who answered when the nurse's office called. He just needed consistency, and we gave him that in spades. This past summer he turned 20, built like a string bean but strong in the shoulders, always leaning into things. Still swings by my shop a couple times a week, sometimes to borrow tools, sometimes to pretend he's there to help when he just wants to raid my lunch. He still steals my pencils, the ones I keep in the same spot every time, just so I know when they go missing. And every once in a while he'll walk in, drop the brass locker key on my workbench without a word, and keep moving. Like it's a ritual neither of us has to explain anymore. I asked once if he still had the yellow card, the one from the thrift store, the one Tessa made when she was 9. He didn't answer right away, just nodded toward his dresser. "It's in the top drawer," he said. "It belongs to all 3 of us now." I didn't argue. He was right. The theater sent me a note last month. One of the board ladies wrote to say the balcony rails have held up beautifully. No cracks, no splinters, just polish and time. Brett still calls me when he's got a big curve to cut or a deadline to outrun. I take the jobs I want now. Leave the rest. October storms still put nails in my jaw and wind in my ribs, but I've got thicker bones for it these days. Some nights, Clara and I sit on the porch with mugs of whatever's warm, and when the wind kicks the maples, I still think of Tessa. 12 years old, wide grin, inhaler on a clip, laughing at her own asthma jokes just to make me less scared. The camp consent order sits in a file drawer next to our marriage license. I don't open it often, but I know it's there. I see the label when I go digging for tax returns or old pay stubs. 1 page, 3 signatures, and a timestamp. A square of ground I took back the only way I knew how. I haven't heard from Renee in years. No calls, no letters. And that's fine. Some grief splits you clean, and there's no stitching it after the rip. We were strangers by the time we buried our daughter, and we stayed that way. One evening this past spring, Milo sat in the passenger seat of my truck, my new truck, finally mine and paid for, and asked, "Why do you still keep that old purple hair tie on the visor?" I looked at it for a second, faded, barely holding together. Still there. "Because some things hold better than they look," I said. He looked out the window, nodded once. "Yeah, I get that." Then this last Father's Day, he handed me a card, handmade, yellow paper, sloppy hearts and marker, just like the one he found all those years ago. Only this time the letters weren't backward, and the hearts looked like they were drawn on purpose. Dad, I love you. I put it next to Tessa's card on my dresser. The two sit there now, side by side, a little crooked, a little wrinkled, and looking just fine together. What's one thing you'll hold on to, and one thing you'll finally let go, so you can show up for someone you love? If this story hit you, please like and subscribe. It's one click for you, but a huge support for us. And leave even one word in the comments to help us make more stories.
YouTube picked this for you. Tap it. Let's see if they guessed right.